I don't really have to tell you where I am today. I'm there, Duke's Wood. This is a place that I came to a few weeks ago. And I've come back today. It's a better day today. Might even get a few glimpses of sunshine, but it's just a wheezy wander today. It's a nice day to be walking around the woodlands. And it's quiet too. So I'm going to have a walk down to Mansey Common and have a good walk around there. And we'll see what we can find along the way. Sometimes pictures like this appeal to me because this is where nature becomes almost sculptural, so to speak. And I love the way that this old, what looks like wych elm, it could possibly be goat sallow, but I think this is elm. It's been down a long time, and as you can see, due to the dampness of the conditions in a lot of the more denser areas of Duke's Wood, the moss has run amok, but it's created a most beautiful looking scene, coupled with the developing blackthorn blossom in the background there. It's a really nice picture. I do like Duke's Wood, and if you live in Nottinghamshire and you want a nice walk out, then this is the place to come. We have a saying in this country regarding public transport that you can wait hours for a bus and then two come along at the same time, and that could be applied to this. This is a march moth, and only last week I filmed a march moth at Willow Park, one about 3 feet up a trunk that presumably was roosting or had not long emerged. I'm thinking it's the latter now, because here we have a march moth. Good grief! For once I'm lost for words, and this isn't set up because I'd come to look at the tree purely for the species that's just walked into view. The species that's just walked into view is, of course, the harvestman Megabunus diadema, and I'd come to look at this particular tree because it looked ideal for Megabunus, smooth-barked ash. And I had just a quick glance and then noticed the march moth that was in the process of drying its wings here. It's probably not got too much longer to go before the drying of the wings is finished, and the moth will then fold them over its back. And then lo and behold, what walks into shot but Megabunus diadema. I'm absolutely stunned at that. I am. For once, you've caught me. This is a very rare event. It's almost unheard of for me to be lost for words, but the timing is just impeccable. The only thing that will make it perfect now is if the march moth did fold its wings flat over its body before it flew later this evening. And there's the harvestman, Megabunus diadema, just settling down. I can't believe it. I don't know. It must have just been out of shot all around the other side of the trunk. This is only about a 4 or 5 inch wide trunk. Quite incredible. So we have two species there. Another sighting of march moth, and trundling out of view the harvestman Megabunus diadema. Now I've tried to make this shot a little bit more interesting and give you some idea of the habitat here. This again is an ash tree, and if you look at enough smooth-barked ash trees, you'll inevitably find this particular ladybird. And this is a kidney spot ladybird. When you see it from sideways on, or from certain angles, it has the shape of the old World War II German infantry helmet, but it's one of several black ladybirds where the spotting is red. In the case of the kid spot ladybird, you've got one large, roughly kidney-shaped or roundish spot on each elytra, so just 2 spots on an all-black body. And it's commonly found on ash trunks, and often you'll get them wandering up and down the trunks, and sometimes in good numbers. Usually in woodland, but occasionally this species can also be found on sallows growing at the side of rivers and lakes and ponds. But this is a nice species, and this is a female because this is quite large. If I put my grubby forefinger, you'll get an idea of size, and that's about 4 mil from head, which I think we're pointing upwards. Very difficult to tell with my eyes, but I think the head's upwards. So about 4 millimeters in length. Males are usually about 3 millimeters, just a little bit smaller, and you'll often find them in cop. But in sunny weather, they love nothing more than to sit and bask on the trunks of ash trees. So that's the kidney spot ladybird. What a beautiful plant this is. This seems quite early for me, but this is dog violet. And this is a particularly well flowering individual just at the side of the path here, because I'm just about to leave Duke's Wood and cross between the fields and then go on to Mansey Common. But beautiful. Unusual in that it's a spring flower that's not yellow. I do love a violet. I remember as a child, and I used to visit my grandma and granddad and other members of the family in the village of Lamley, not far from Nottingham. When I was very, very young, I would go into the fields at the back of where they lived and pick a handful of violet flowers and give them to my grandma, who would put them in a little jar. Those days will never come back. But thankfully, the dog violet's a tenacious little plant. If ever you do have these in your garden, and then you want to try and get rid of them because they become so invasive, you'll find how tenacious this plant is. Nonetheless, it's absolutely beautiful on a spring day like this. It's amazing how a shaft of sunlight alters the tone of a place. Not just raises the temperature, but just makes it different. But this is Mansey Common. I've now left Duke's Wood and walked through between the fields, and I'm coming back to revisit the place where I came a few weeks ago, when I noted how silent the woodland was. It was also a much duller day as well, so there appears to be bits of blue sky coming increasingly now. So I'm going to walk back down there, but there is some noise from aircraft and farm machinery. But it's nice to hear the birds singing today. Not as silent as it was a few weeks ago. Now here's a ladybird that I don't see that often. It does occasionally, or at least it did used to occur in large numbers, and this is the orange ladybird. Often found predominantly on trees like sycamore, where it feeds on aphids, and it can occur in decent numbers. Now, the authorities will say that the arrival of the harlequin ladybird has severely affected this species, but I remain far from convinced of any ill effects from the harlequin ladybird, and I think that the orange ladybird, like all other species of ladybird, is prone to huge fluctuations in numbers. Saying that, this year might be quite good for this species because we're already just into the last week of March. And I've seen 3 of these in this past week now. Saw another one earlier on today at Duke's Wood. And before that, last week, I had one at Wellow Park. That also was on beach. And I have seen good numbers of these accumulating here in the crevices on beech trunks in the past, but it's usually confined to 1 or 2s. But if you was to beat sycamore, you'd probably find this species quite easily still. Now here's another find. Not an unsurprising find, but in reality you don't find many noctuid moths at rest by day. And this one I noticed on approach to this dead old oak, just a young oak that has died for some reason. But this is an early grey, and it's one of our more beautifully marked early flying noctuid moths. And if you run a trap in your garden, even in a suburban area, you're very likely to get this species. The food plant is honeysuckle, which is why I'm not surprised that this moth is here, because there's lots of honeysuckle growing both at Mansey Common and at Duke's Wood. But it's a nice find. Occasionally I used to get them on the fence during the day in the garden in the days when I did have honeysuckle, but it is a moth that occurs pretty much annually at home at Market Walsall. It's a lovely species, beautifully marked. Although it's various shades of greys and almost blacks, put them all together and nature comes up with a real treat in the form of an early grey. Behind me here is another link to Sherwood Forest, and confirming that this was indeed linked with what we call Sherwood Forest now, or at least what most people think of as being Sherwood Forest around the Edwinstowe area. And it's the bracken. I've walked all round Mansey Common, and as far as I can remember there's none in Duke's Wood, but there's this one patch of bracken that's either side of the path here, well, a little bit this side of the path. Very isolated. Almost, because on the roadside, at the side of Lound Wood, between the villages of Wellow and Eakring, in the hedgerow there is some more bracken. Another link that links all of Nottingshire's woodlands up, at least those north of Nottingham. One time of day it would have included the whole county. You may well be able to hear humming, and that's bumblebees. This time of year, especially on a slightly overcast day, some more sun on its way, as you walk through the wood you'll often disturb bumblebees, queen bumblebees that have been sort of resting or spending overnight in the grass at the side of the path. There's lots here today, and this very large goat sallow that I'm stood under is alive with nectaring queen bumblebees. Although the first workers are out, almost reminiscent of the bee tree in my garden. Now here's an interesting fungi, if I remember my fungi. Not that I have a great knowledge of fungi. This is witch's butter. It's virtually jet black, quite similar to what they used to call Jew's ear at one time, but you can't call it that nowadays for fear of offending somebody. But it's still all right to call this witch's butter, which I find very strange. But it's just one of those jelly-like fungi, but it does have a form to it. You can see the top is shiny and underneath is matte. Very strange thing, and in some ways it's almost representative of a witch's hat. Some particular bits, some often have a point before they open up, but it's not very often I see it in this state. But very strange, very spongy. And it literally is just like jelly, the jelly that you'd have as a child at your birthday party. But this is what the witches put on the bread, according to English folklore. The sound of near silence is absolutely beautiful. It's the most relaxing thing on the planet, I think. And I haven't seen a soul in my wheezy wanderings today, despite it being a lovely day. It is a Monday, admittedly, but it's a beautiful Monday now. Most of the clouds dissipated and thinned out and allowing for some pleasant sunshine. So I thought that while I'm in between Mansey Common over there and Duke's Wood just here, I'll have 5 minutes. But there is method to my madness. The method's just here. For years, as long as pretty much as I can remember, there's been 5 or 6 plastic covered straw bales here to block off what was a bit of an entrance at one time. Over the years, the polythene membrane has been ripped or torn off, presumably by members of the public. And what a shame it's exposed this straw, which is the ideal opportunity to potentially put a false scorpion on the Duke's Wood and Mansey Common species list. So I'm going to have a dig around in here in a minute or two and find some suitable material. Now that these have been exposed for years, there should be something in them somewhere. And that will be my day tomorrow. Tomorrow's not such a good forecast. Getting windier, wetter. It's going to be like that for several days, so I might as well get something that keeps me entertained. And while it's still only March, sorting through samples of various materials is still well worth doing, because that's where a lot of invertebrates are going to be. They're not up and about yet. So I might as well make a start, but to be honest, it's just lovely to sit here. Well, 2 carrier bags, 2 samples. This is the straw bale, and this is some cut grass samples from when they've been cutting the grassy areas in Duke's Wood. Dug down a bit, found some dry stuff. Might not be a deal in it, but might yield a few 1mm long beetles, you never know. But hopefully there might be a false scorpion in. That would be the prize from today. But it has been a lovely walk. Enjoyed seeing Mansey Common in better light. Very damp and quite wet in there at the moment, because the water, when there's been a clay-based soil, the water just runs down. So a bit wet underfoot in parts, but pleasant nonetheless, and well worth coming back a couple of times during the summer. There's some old fruit trees in there, and that's a clue to what I might be coming back for. But now it's time to take the 2 samples home, and for me to sample the local ale.